And if anybody wants more detail on any part of that, I'm glad to share it.
Yeah, I'd just like to ask everyone to ask the question, Marty, one by one, so we don't have 5 people hitting them at one time, okay? So who would like to ask the first question?
Well, that would be like work if there were 5 or more at once. So
That's right. What about you, Claire? What about Wayne?
So while you wait for that, I'll give a little more. Throughout my career, I've been mostly in field operations. That means a lot of times being directly on the jobs or overseeing jobs out in the field, traveling to them. Most recently, right now, my role is I've been overseeing all estimating. So I've been overseeing the estimating department here. We bid about $1 billion of work a year. Some of that's budgeting. We acquire around 200 million a year. And but luckily this January, they've started to transition me back to just treatment plant. So I'll be in charge of bidding the treatment plant work and then overseeing the construction field operations too. So there's pros and cons to everything. Now I get back on the road more. That's a con, but it's a little more exciting and fun. That's a pro. There's no job without pros and cons, is what I found. But
Marty, when you started, did you find you had to travel more than you expected as far as moving from place to place?
well, first I was young and, I wasn't tied down. So my first job, I moved with Gilbane to a high rise in Cleveland. And after 3 months, they moved me to Pittsburgh and they decided they didn't want me in Pittsburgh. They moved me back to Cleveland. Then they moved me to Michigan. Those aren't real far moves. But you get to choose. Some companies, the bigger the company, the more likely they want to send you further places. The smaller, more local the company, the less likely. So depending if you want to go see a little bit of the world, a lot of companies will move you there, help you get settled in. Certainly these days they do. They try to promote getting people to move to where the jobs are. So if you got big companies like Turner, I don't know who you guys have heard of, Turner or Gilbane, or the really big ones like Scott, you were the floor, or, national or international companies, you'd be naive to go work for them and not think they're going to ask you to move. But of course it all depends, but bigger the company, the more likely the moves. And if you're willing to move up, you're willing to move, it also accelerates your ability to move up. If a company has a need in Oklahoma City and nobody else wants to go and you raise your hand, suddenly, you tend to get more responsibility put on you. Another common question that comes up is there's typically a path. A lot of people in construction, they might start out as what's called a project engineer, maybe a senior project engineer, an assistant project manager, and then project manager, and senior project manager, and then the vice president. And people often get caught in that and they don't understand that it's okay to be a really great project engineer. I remember at Gilbane, I was hired on as a project engineer. That was the lowest title. Don't get hung up on titles. And I went to work on this 45-story high rise back then. Okay, it was 35 years ago. It was $100 million then, probably $500 million job now. And my boss was a project engineer. And I was like, well, you're just a project engineer. And he's like, son, I'm project engineer in charge of all the submittals and all the material deliveries and coordinations and schedules on a $100 million project. I was like, oh, okay. I guess that's not a bad thing. He said, no, it's not. So there's some people in this current company who were spectacular project engineers. That's where they want to fit in. And that's okay. You don't always have to be on a rising crescendo. And I see that more and more today. It used to be whether you wanted to or not, that was the path. And that's not the case anymore.
So who has any questions yet? I know some of you must be thinking about this.
Are most people in high school or?
Yes.
Is that right? What you told me? Okay. So you're probably trying to figure out, what in the world you want to do. I guess I did it by process of elimination. I was like, I don't want to be a lawyer because I heard bad things about them, not because I knew anything. I was like, I don't want to be a doctor. Who would want to be in school that long? I was like, I'm not doing that. And so I actually, what I did, because it was old school and there wasn't the internet, I picked up the dictionary, and somebody said, well, you should be an engineer. And I looked under engineering, and it said, it started out with aerospace engineering. I was like, ooh, that looks like really hard math. And then it had chemical engineering. I was like, oh, I wasn't good in chemistry. And I read civil engineering. It said construction. I was like, oh, I like construction. It was kind of funny. There wasn't any method to my madness. I just kind of stumbled into that. But luckily, there's associations like this and people like Scott and others who can maybe mentor you a bit and help you try to figure out, because it's hard to figure out, which way you want to go.
And Marty, a lot of our students are curious about pay structures. What do you think today a civil engineer right out of college might start at a company for?
It is regionally based. Like if you're in Cincinnati versus New York City or San Diego or Seattle, they're quite different. In the Ohio Valley market, and I know you've got a broad base of people here in the Ohio Valley market, low 60s. Civil engineers, mechanical engineers tend to make a little more. Electrical engineers tend to make a little more. But civil engineering in Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana, Tennessee, I'll call it the Midwest, below 60s. I am not current on, if I think you said some people were living in California, and
Yeah, I'd suspect they might start more around 75 or so.
it'd be higher. Yeah. So it pays pretty well. I know I've got 3 kids, and 2 of my daughters, one is a production editor for Scholastic, and another one is a social media director. And boy, I tell you, it's criminal how low they get paid. It seems like much less than 60 grand a year. And the one lives in Brooklyn. So yeah. So if in terms of engineering, the pay structure can support a decent living. You can have an upward path if you want. In construction, it's the same. So there's civil engineering, and some people, when they get out of school, or construction management, they can go a construction path. Or if you're in engineering, you can decide, hey, I like to design buildings. I like to do the calculations on how thick the concrete is and what structural steel members there are and stuff like that. And so they're similar probably in pay structures, very different what you do. The civil engineer will be more tied to a desk, working off. I've actually got 3 monitors. That's why you see me looking around. I've got actually 4 monitors, but
Marty,
as if I can handle that much, but.
we have a question from Timmy.
Okay.
Oh, I was going to ask, can you hear me first?
Yes. Yeah.
I was going to ask, so what do you recommend for civil engineers to wear for like everyday? Like what's some civil engineering essential? This might be a bit superficial, but what's some civil engineering essentials in terms of like gear to have? Because I know when you do field work and stuff, I talked to someone and he said you need steel-toed boots and other things. And I don't know about office and stuff like that.
Well, things over the last few decades, when I started out, I wore a tie every day, and I didn't really like that. And that was even on the construction site. Things have relaxed quite a bit. Whether you wear jeans or not in the office is kind of a company cultural. I know highly respected engineers that their company culture allows jeans. Generally, most people anymore, if I stand up, I'm not wearing a tie. I'm wearing a simple shirt. I actually don't have jeans on today, but so if you're going on a job site, the job site dictates, and the job site safety rules, whether you need, hard hat safety glasses, whether it's regular good work boots or steel toe boots. I have both. So in the office, it's a matter of company culture. Jeans are sometimes okay, and if not, it's nothing too fancy anymore, really. Again, it's also kind of, the smaller the company, probably the more relaxed it is, and the bigger the company and the further north you go, it seems like the more you might get into, a really nice dress shirt and for meetings wear a tie. So that's kind of the differentiator, size of companies, and then the company culture. And then in the office versus the field. In the field, you gotta go along with what is safe. If you're going to walk out on the job, you gotta go along with all the rules. There's a lot of protocol. Steel toe boots, you know what? They've come a long way. I've worn them across 35 years. They used to be really uncomfortable, and now I bought some Caterpillar ones that are actually, I wear them hiking. They're so comfortable. So does that answer your question, or would you like to probe a little more there?
Yes, sir. That mostly answers my question.
Okay.
I got another question if no one else is asking.
Yep. Go ahead.
Can you hear me well? Sorry about that.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So branching off what you were talking about earlier and your internship and working on the field, for a high school student going into college, how else would you recommend someone gets experience or intel, on going to college in general and knowing what kind of engineering what you want to do?
Okay. So there's I kind of sense a couple questions. What's type of engineering and how do you get the experience?
Yes, sir.
The easier question is how you get the experience. Some colleges have internships, some don't. Even if they don't have an internship, there's a lot of programs, including ones like this, where people are willing to help you find companies that are looking for summer help, college help. And it's a two-way street. I've probably mentored, I stopped counting at 200 interns across my career. So it's a great proving ground. Companies love internships, even if they're just in the summer. So getting experience, if you're once you've selected a field, that's the harder question, is once you're in college, certainly if you're not going to school summer, companies are looking for people who want to come on and intern. And the two-way street is, okay, you don't get paid 60 grand a year, a rate for the summer. You get paid a lower rate, but you learn. So the company's benefit is they get to see if they like you, hire you after graduation. And in the meantime, if they don't hire you, if it's not a fit, or if they don't need people, you've got that experience to put on your resume. So that's a great launch compared to having none. So I highly recommend that. And if you're having trouble, reach out, to whoever you know, including Scott, and try to get some communication going. Right now, we're a smaller company. We're 200 million a year. We're looking for about 11 or 12 interns for the summer. And the real struggle is I really need them continuing into the fall, but that doesn't happen. So then the other question is, how do you select? That's really, Scott, that's a tough question. Are there any, these are the new days. I grew up in the old days where people took a shot in the dark and then they changed majors and they got out and they went back. Are there any testing that Heartland does or through you, Scott, to help guide people to where their abilities and where their likes are? And I see Scott left us. Scott, where'd you go? So I know Scott's given me some testing here, way down the pike of my career to help with that. So I would say it's time consuming. You need people who are willing to listen to you and not push you. Like, I love treatment plant construction, but I should not be pushing you to, treatment plant construction's it, baby. That's wonderful stuff. No, they need to be open-minded advisors to help guide you. And Scott, as you stepped away, is there any testing that all these people could do to help them figure out, well, I'm terrible at math. Well, if you're terrible at math, don't be computer science, right? Oh my gosh. My daughter wanted to go into computer science. She hates math. I'm like, that is a big mistake. That's not a good idea.
No, Marty's right. We have some assessments and all of the coaches can work with you. Now, when you hear Scott, my name's William at Heartland, but my middle name's Scott, and that's who I go by with my family. So now you know.
Yeah, okay.
William Scott. So Marty can continue to call me Scott, and you'll know I'm Coach William. But what we do have, we put a PowerPoint together that I'd love to share with the other coaches. And it goes through engineering, and it's a little, shows you civil engineering and what it's about and what the basic pay ranges are, what you need. We've got chemical engineering, structural, and I believe structural engineering, electrical, and a couple of others. And like Marty said, if you're not a math wizard, you don't want to go into nuclear engineering or electrical because it gets very theoretical. And some people don't want the theory. They'd rather have a hands-on application and actually see what you do. And I think, and Marty can speak to this, that if you're in civil engineering, you actually get to collaborate with architects and other structural engineers and people. So you get to see what you're designing and building actually come out and be completed. And how do you feel about that, Marty?
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to add on, and also during high school, I mean, there are job opportunities for summer also, potentially. And I also wanted to add that, what do you love? I mean, like my daughter Laura, she loved making videos, and I was like, oh wow, that's cool, And she used these programs, and I bought her one, and then so she kind of found what she loved, and she followed up on that in college. She went to a media school, a media department in a good school. And so she kind of launched herself that way. So, and with me, again, I think I did get a little lucky. I managed, it was pure luck, to get a summer job with a home construction company. Man, I really love construction. And then, it was luck. I looked, well, okay, I'll be an engineer, even though I'm not great in math. But civil engineering is construction. And so I kind of followed what I loved. And now I don't do any actual engineering. I'm in construction. And so who answered the question? Is it okay to ask you back? Do you talk about, does anything turn you on? What do you, when you see something? A lot of guys and girls these days, they like, the computer programs and doing an app and that kind of stuff. But
I had one student, Marty, who wanted to be a software engineer, and he was crazy about it, but he was in high school and he really didn't know what they did. So I sent him to do a job shadow interview before COVID-19, and he went and visited his uncle at work. And then his uncle had him meet another software engineer and another one. And he called me up. He was so excited the next day and said, I do not want to be a software engineer. I would never want to be one. I said, why? He said, they sit in little rooms with no windows and they look at a screen for 12 hours a day and they decode programs. He said, it would drive me crazy. So it's important, like Marty said, to really love what you're going to do. And then you're going to be much more likely to succeed. Okay. But if you do something that someone said, well, be an engineer because they make lots of money, or be a lawyer because they make lots of money, and your heart's not in it, the chances are you're not going to be very successcul. So it's important to choose something that you really like.
Be pretty unhappy every night.
Yeah.
Which isn't very good spot to be in. But so circling back on, trying to help people on the call, William, try to get it right. With, can they do some of these testing and it doesn't take a bunch of hours, and it kind of guide them to, okay, I'm strong on this, and this. And I'm sure I'm not perfectly answering the question, because that's probably the toughest question you could ask.
Well, Marty was good
about what you want to do.
Well, Marty, you were good about talking about the math, because I worked for GE Aircraft for a while, and they gave me a job as a sim engineer. And now I'm not a math wizard, but I do have some logic occasionally. So the sim engineer is a computer integrated manufacturing engineer. So you actually work with the machine tools in the factory, and they have programs that get downloaded from host computers to PCs that actually run the tools. And so I was good at helping to design databases and doing the training for the people, but I would never consider myself a great programmer, even though I did some. But like Marty said, it's much more important to really enjoy the work. Okay, so I'm hoping someone else will have a question. What about you, Ronnie? How about you, Nathaniel? We got a lot of participants here, and I know a lot of times that,
Did I answer the last question though? And enough, or would you like to add a sidebar to it to try to direct me? I get, I get off track too.
Oh yes, sir. Yeah, I hear that a lot of times too, because I talk to a bunch of other like engineer guys, and I always get the same response too. It's the hardest question one. Like no one has the perfect answer for that. And I think I
Yeah.
took that engineering specification test thingy that would like tell me which one I'd like the most, and it lands on like the electrical side, and computers. And ironically, that's the one I kind of want to do too, or at least
Mhm.
think I'm interested in. And I had a job shadow before at this one military place. It's not a military place, but they make electronics for the military, like the cars and stuff, and not so much the weapons, but more so the vehicles. And I thought it was pretty cool. I thought I could probably get into it, but I'm kind of lost though, because there's a lot of other things too that are really interesting, but I don't know which one to choose. So I'm
Hmm.
thank you for your input though. That it does.
Yeah, so maybe it's choosing, you're going, right, you're going this way, not that way, but you got to narrow it down. The job shadow thing's a fantastic idea. I mean, can you do that again and, just um, get a little more detail.
part of our trouble now with that job shadow is that with
COVID.
COVID-19, it's hard to do it in
Yeah.
person, but we're fortunate that Marty joined us tonight because he can at least take this time to work with us on Zoom and help give you guys a heck of a lot better impression on what this is all about instead of a little 3-minute blurb. So I think that this is an opportunity I'd like everyone to take advantage of because of Marty's deep experience. And if you notice, he said when he was in high school, he worked in a home construction and decided he really enjoyed the idea of building things. And then he was working, I'm sure, with engineers and supervisors there. And so then that probably helped him look at the direction to go in civil engineering.
May I ask a question, please?
Certainly. Thank you, Mushtaq.
Yeah, my name is Mushtaq Memon calling from Atlanta. I'm one of the consultants. At the same time, I am a retired professor of veterinary medicine.
Oh,
And I have been through quite a few years, 30 plus years, teaching and mentoring young people who love animals, want to get in the profession. And it's a lot of work, about 8 years of education after high school. And, a sad situation at this time that our average, debt per graduate is close to about 150,000 to 200,000
oh,
you know? And
yes.
so I just keep on wondering, you're talking about engineering, and the speaker mentioned about the incomes, people have. And then at the same time, you get into this philosophical circus, you should do the things which you enjoy. But at the same time, you have these young folks, high school students, some of them really are not 100% sure what they are going to do. So is it really fair to guide them to the high paying jobs? What's it really, something that they may not be happy later on in their life? Well, I'll stop at that and let the speaker or yourself, address that. Thank you.
Thank you. Marty, what's your take on that idea?
Well, a lot of good subjects there. One is the amount of debt students come out of college with. I am not a proponent of running up high debt and being burdened. So, an option is, it's a lot of people have wanted to do it is take a year off and work while you figure out. Don't rush into a college program, spend $30,000, maybe running up your debt, and then at the end of that year have nothing really to show for it toward what you'd really like to do. I'd say don't be afraid to not be forced into a college program right away and at a high rate school. I don't, Scott, you've done more than me, but I don't know that there's a direct correlation between the cost of the college and your happiness and or success in life. I think it's somewhat unrelated to
I
just
agree
the
with you
most
on that,
expensive
Marty.
school.
My father went to Harvard University, to Harvard MBA school, and he had some men that had bankrupt their family's business. They were such horrible businessmen, and he went to them for advice. And they said, "Oh, don't go to law school or medical school." And my father said he would have enjoyed going to medical school, but instead he went to business school and studied finance, and he never did well. And he was a good teacher, and he went to work for GE Aircraft Engines. And at the end of his life, he had had a very mediocre career that many people with degrees from much smaller schools like Ball State in Indiana or Bowling Green in Ohio were better in those areas. And my brother, Jonathan, went to the same school Marty did, the University of Cincinnati, and he went and got a master's in public health, and he works for the state of New Jersey as he was a research scientist, and he had to help a graduate of Harvard University out to develop the research because the guy had never done it and didn't know anything about it, and he wasn't making much money. So big name schools might get you on the track faster, but then you have to excel, and that's where a lot of students from good solid schools excel better.
A couple other things there I'd like to talk about, and it introduces more options so that, that doesn't help at first, but, there are 2-year programs. I think my youngest daughter would have, looking back, would have done much better going to a 2-year program with video editing first instead of a classical liberal arts school. And she took a bunch of classes that she didn't like and didn't want, and you pay 25 grand a year for. Well, that wouldn't have happened at the 2-year school. So I think that 2-year schools are coming back a little more in vogue, especially with the student debt issue. I'd also put out there some people that like to work with their hands. People in the trades do make good money. Certainly in the big cities, you'll make as much or more being a carpenter, plumber, operator in the trades in the bigger cities than you do coming out of school as an engineer in the Midwest. It's not, it's looked down upon at times, but we're dying for people to work in the field, all the trades people, and that want to move up through the ranks and become crew leads or up to superintendent level. And I'd say none of our superintendents have a college degree, but they earn very good livings if it's the money part. But a lot of them, they love what they do, so the trades are another option. So trades, which don't require, and then there's union versus non-union, but the trades, and then the 2-year schools that are a lot less costly while you figure out more specifically what you want to do are also good options to not load on the debt. Fortunately, my kids, they worked, during summers and, and during school also to help. But yeah, so that adds more to the possibilities of, okay, I'm going to a 4-year college and that's what I've got. That's all my options. Actually, it's a much broader field. It's take a year off, figure it out. It's go to a 2-year, it's go into the trades, it's do other things. So, but I think a key that's now acceptable, and Scott, William, it wasn't 30, 40 years ago. You were just kind of told what to do. I mean, now part of the problem is now there's freedom to choose, and that creates this new issue of, okay, I got to figure out what I like.
I think that's so true. And Marty, a number of years ago, when I worked for Fluor Corporation, I went up to a laborer's school in middle of Ohio, and it was for the laborers union workers. And what they do is go to school like at a college campus in the wintertime, and they went for free because they were members of the union. And so what they would do is stay in a dormitory. They had a dining hall there, and they'd go to school in the morning for 4 hours hands-on, and then in the afternoon, 4 hours classroom. And the director told us there was a young woman who was a single mom. She was a laborer. She started out as a flag woman on road jobs. And so she took so many classes that she learned how to do concrete pours and how to supervise them. And those are pretty tricky, aren't they, Marty?
Yeah, They are. I was also thinking, don't be afraid of being a non-classical person. Some of our best coworkers here, we call them, have followed a non-classical path. They didn't go to college right away. Then they went to, a lady we hired as a project engineer. She's 32 years old, just graduated. She went to construction management school once she figured out what she wanted to do, and she's on a great asset to the company. And so we
And
really
Marty,
like that.
that's what this girl who was the flag girl, she learned about the concrete pours and other things. So when she went back to work, she was on a large project, and the civil engineer that was supposed to come and supervise the pour had food poisoning, and the superintendent was really upset. He said, "What are we going to do? We've got, all these concrete trucks coming soon to do the pour." And she raised her hand and said, "I know how to do that." And so they talked to her and they trusted her, and she supervised the entire pour. And the engineer came up the next day and said she did an outstanding job. Then later she went and she got an associate's degree in civil engineering. Then she got a baccalaureate and she became a superintendent. And if you think about that, if you're like Marty and you're hiring people, it would be much more valuable to have her as a engineer to become a superintendent than have someone right out of school that's never worked in construction. So it's a longer road in a way, but at the same time, it didn't incur a lot of debt for her either.
Right. Yeah. So thank you for that. That tying down to, long-term happiness can be not having 150 grand of debt staring you down. And
Yeah,
then maybe not having what you really love to do. That would be bad.
that would be real bad.
Yeah.
So, Shad, I appreciate your comments. I think that was helpful. And thank
Oh.
you, Marty. Now, we must have someone else that has some questions. I mean, this is your opportunity. And remember, the only silly question is the one you didn't ask, because the fact that Marty's here now, you can ask him and he'll answer you. As you can tell, he's got a tremendous experience. And I think he's given us some great insight so far tonight. So again, if anyone's got a question, now's your chance to go ahead and ask. We've got Wyland who's asked some questions. We still have Wayne tonight. And Mushtak brought up some great points. We have Derek. I know you, Derek, and you might have questions. Or Wezang might have questions, or Reese, or Sean, or Claire. We have all these.
He's calling you all out.
Lynn, Ronnie, Doyle, Brixana, Maria, Michael. Come on now, some of you must have questions. So who wants to go next? Okay, Jerry, you can go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry, because my screen is frozen right now, so I'm not sure if you hear me right now. So sorry in advance. Hello?
yeah, you can go ahead and ask.
Oh, okay, I can't tell if you can hear me right now because it says I'm muted for some reason.
Oh, you're
I hear
fine.
you.
Okay. So, in the future for like in the engineering field, like civil engineering, how are the job opportunities looking?
They look great. There's a high need, and I like that too. And people who work here like that because there's a high need. That means, there, you do like making more money. So there's an upward pressure on that because there's a limited amount of entry. And moving forward, there's a lot of investment in green technology, in water and wastewater and infrastructure. With the COVID, there's been a downturn in things like, strip malls and hotels and some of that. But a lot of the construction industry is we're busier than ever. And so I think that the easy answer is that the future is bright. There's a great need. And I don't know where it rates overall. And, you see all these top 10 lists, but I don't know where civil engineering. It's highly sought after personnel on the design and construction side.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, right now, construction, you couldn't tell sometimes by the news, but we have been, and our competitors are busier than ever. Our backlog is higher than ever, and it's kind of shocking, right? It's like, oh, I thought everything slowed down, and that's not what happened generally.
So that sounds like there's a lot of security and opportunity both in civil engineering and in construction management.
So I see a question about physical strength, the field of engineering require minimal. I'm sitting at a desk right now. If you do go into the field, whether any branch of engineering or construction management, you need to go to the field, which may entail, climbing some, walking up steps, occasionally, if you're really into the field, maybe a ladder, but the strength, no, you don't. Now, if you're in the trades, that's a different question, and good companies run you through some tests to make sure that you're not putting yourself or the company in a bad situation, to know what some metrics are of what you can do so they don't push you beyond that. Yeah, I do have up, if you want to type a question, actually, you can type them too. So I do see that.
Yeah, that's a good idea. So if you have a question, go ahead and type one in your chat. You see it at the bottom of the Zoom screen between participants and share screen. So you can go ahead and type some up, and then Marty will take them for you. Again, this is a great opportunity. I'm sure you didn't sign on tonight to the webinar just because you wanted entertainment and get out your bags of popcorn. So this is
yeah, I'm not that entertaining.
Well, you're doing great,
unfortunately.
But I think Marty's very informative. So again, this is your chance. We're not going to do this all the time, and we're recording it. So I really would hope that some more of you would just go ahead and type up a question. It's okay, and you can just type it to everyone or Marty, and then he'll answer it for you.
Marty, I have a question. My name is Wei. I'm one of the consultants here. I work with a lot of kids from immigrant families. So for the I'm not talking about high school choosing a career, but so as a company executive, when you look for the potential job candidate, does it matter if someone was born from a foreign country versus who were born here?
Definitely not. We currently, we're not a huge company. We probably have 225 hourly people in the field and 80 to 100 salaried supervisory type people. And it's unfortunate on the supervisory side. I've spent, a great part of my career attempting to mentor what was, non-traditional, which, let's be honest, middle-aged white guys, trying to bring along, mentoring many young ladies through the decades and people from other countries. And that's actually, they're more sought after because we need, it's seen as a strength to have that in your company for difference of opinions and ideas, and a broader perspective. In the field at the hourly level, out of the 225 hourly people, probably 50 to 75 are not from this country, I would say. So that's not an inhibitor at all. In fact, it's helpful. We're trying to integrate more people, whether it be, get away from just the male, middle-aged, white, Caucasian. That's a very high industry push, and it's been that way for decades at the bigger company level, and now it's made its way over the past decade to moderate to small size companies. So definitely not a detraction. It's I find it an attraction, but because we want to integrate, we need people right now. We need in the field, we need 50 hourly people. Pipe fitters, pipe layers, carpenters, cement finishers, supervisors, yard pipe supervisors, equipment setters. It's unreal. That's just the field. And then on the management side, I just put together the organizational structure for our treatment plant division. And we need project engineers, project managers as the superintendents right now. And so it's a great entry time for everyone into construction. But do you want to expand on that question at all or point me in another direction?
I think that's perfect. Thank you so much. And
Okay.
just for students who came to US to study and finish their degree, and I think right now they need a company to sponsor their visa. And is that something that your company offered as well?
We
Sponsor.
have done that. We're not, I say, good at it. The big companies are probably have human resource departments that
Right.
are regularly engaged in helping and promoting that. We have done that here. I think just once we haven't had the opportunity, quite honestly. I'd like the opportunity more, but it doesn't come our way, so to speak. And two, it's a truth to the industry. The bigger companies have a lot of resources, and there's a high, like I said, a high desire for non-traditional construction or engineering personnel, and they tend to, I'll say, gobble up the entrance from other countries, and we're left without any. So we're kind of like, well, we don't like that, and we're trying to figure out what to do about that.
Okay.
And Marty's right, Way. I work for floor engineering construction, and they're considered a large one, aren't they, Marty?
Oh yeah.
And they had a huge legal department that would work. And I worked on the Floor for Null project for about 16 years. And some of our engineering managers, we had one man who was a Muslim from Turkey named Salim Tarabas, and he and I were excellent friends. And he was a principal engineer, which was like a engineering manager for structural. And he and I went on recruiting trips together out to New Mexico to one of our projects there, into California. And we had another man, a Chinese American, who worked with us, who was outstanding engineer. And then we had another one from India who was our good friend. And everyone got along great. And as Marty said, they brought different perspectives to the table. So we were able to appreciate some of the differences. And Salim Tarabas, the Turkish engineer, he learned to speak Spanish so that when we had jobs out in the Southwest, he could speak some Spanish to the different workers and supervisors. And the idea that we had such a group of talented people was a really great opportunity for us. So Marty's right about that, and we work with helping students get visas at the larger company who graduated, because there are needs, and it takes sometimes a little bit of legal maneuvering, but you heard Marty say that in his company size, even he'd be really willing to have some recent graduates that they could work with.
Yeah, our HR department, I mean, we're stretched. We have 2 people in our human resource department, and they're persistently in job fairs trying to find people who want to come work for us. So it, as much, I'd say it's mostly that we haven't had the opportunity. We would absolutely do it, but no opportunity.
Thank you, Marty.
Thank you so much.
Mhm.
Now, I'd like to get a few more questions in before we sign off. How about you, Lynn?
Me?
Yes. Do you have more questions?
Not that I could think of right now.
Okay. What about you, Tomoyo?
It is great interview to listen, and I tried to my sons listen with me, and he is senior, and then one of his assignment is talking about his future career. So I thought that this is a great topic for him to listen. So it's been really great. great information, great interview to listen. So I don't have a question, but I just wanted to leave the comment. Thank you so much.
And if your son has any questions, he's certainly welcome to
Yeah,
ask.
I did actually ask him a question, but he said he just listened. So
Okay,
if it
that's
come
all right.
up, then I will let you know.
Okay, sometimes we need to think about what we hear and then we might get a question later.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And what about you, Michael?
While they're thinking, I'll put in a plug that what I like about 2021 and not 1975 or 1980 is that you're allowed to be non-traditional much more so than back then. You're not immediately, I'll call it pigeonholed. And again, that makes it harder to decide, but hopefully that proves to a better end. The non-traditional, not right into college, the 2-year college, the trades, you know, really, I think helps long-term to not put yourself in a bad position of a career you don't like and a bill every month you hate. So
Marty's right about that. And one of the other things we recommend as coaches is we have a number of scholarship resources we make available to our students. And some of our students have gotten outstanding all expense paid scholarships to smaller colleges. And I usually recommend they take those instead of going to a little bit larger school or better known school where they have to pay 70 or 80,000 a year, because those loans are onerous when you have to pay them back. And I think one of the biggest problems we have now with young college graduates is they're so deep in debt that when they get married and start families, they're paying off college loans for 20 years and they can't afford to buy a house. They can't buy furniture or cars, and it's very difficult. So again, if you can get scholarships or go to good schools like Marty did, the University of Cincinnati, where my son also went, and my brother, that if you go to a school like University of Cincinnati, the costs are reasonable and you get an excellent education, and you're going to do just as well as many people from big name schools. Well, if no one else has any questions, this will be our last time. Going once, going
Well, I
twice.
think I have one question.
Good,
All
thank
right.
you, Jerry.
So I'm thinking about like the architecture field right now. So how does construction management relate to architecture?
Okay, so architecture, I'm not an expert at it, but some of my friends are in it. So then there's like, I like to use visual. So, there's all the engineering over here, and then there's the construction management. And then there's the architecture side, has a flair to it, whether, architects often design buildings. They have their go-to books and formulas and programs, just like the civil engineers, but they tend to be more, less structural, more envelope, window wall and roofing, and more into the overall appearance of the project. So with the architecture, you can tend toward a job that has some design in it yet, and then you can tend all the way to where you're just into the vision. You're totally into the 3D world and figuring out what looks great, what gets people motivated in their home or workspace. So architecture is a pretty broad field, and pretty exciting. I probably haven't try to guide me here. Any other specific information you want?
Like how does the architect work together with the construction team in a project?
Okay, so the architect will typically come up with the plans. Many times they're supported by the civil engineer. Maybe the civil engineer does the design for the foundations. The architect, takes their work and creates then the building, creates the interior space and all the finishes. So they will often draft the plans. They used to be called blueprints. Now everything's on the computer. So they're often, well-versed in, CAD, just like the civil engineer. And they have other programs, which I'm not so in tune with, that are more directed toward less structure design and more visual design. So they tend to come up with most projects, unless they're a infrastructure project, most other projects have an architecture firm in the lead, and they create the prints for the construction companies to bid or build from.
That's a good.
Oh,
Go ahead, Jerry.
thank you so much.
I was just going to say that there was an engineer who graduated from the University of Cincinnati who was on the Golden Gate Bridge project back when they designed and built it. And so he had created a rudimentary design that would, I believe it was a cantilevered bridge. And then he worked with the French architect who had designed the disastrous Tacoma Narrows Bridge. Do you remember that story, Marty?
Yeah.
That bridge went crazy. It was a suspension bridge, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And a storm blew up. And what happened to it?
Well, the design didn't account for the harmonic frequency of the structure. Whether you're alive or innate object, you have a harmonic frequency, and the wind happened to get in tune with that and caused it to fall down, basically.
Well, that's what was fascinating, because the French architect designed that. So when he was working on the project of the Golden Gate, the civil engineer from the University of Cincinnati, who was also the project manager, worked closely with him and described to him this harmonics problem. And so they worked it out so that the Golden Gate would not have that problem. And the University of Cincinnati engineer project manager was the first project manager in the United States to create a safety envelope. And they had very few fatalities on that project, and it ushered in a whole new series of safety. Okay, Sishen, would you like to ask Marty your question? Go ahead, Sishen.
Muted.
Oh,
While we
cannot-
wait for that, risk management's a whole nother area available. The construction and industry in general has come a long way in terms of risk management, people not getting hurt. In the old days, people got hurt all the time. It was terrible. And now there's a whole industry of risk management for all types of construction or industry, relating to putting in place the advanced processes and investment to keep the workers safe.
yeah, I thought that was pretty impressive. Now, Sishen, you can just click on the mute button on the little microphone where the red line is, and that will unmute you. And then you can go ahead and ask your question.
And I see somebody typed a question
Oh,
also.
good.
Yeah, so how does the atmosphere in the workplace differ in each specific field of engineering? So field of work, I'll call them personalities, and then company personalities. A company personality probably has more impact than the field of engineering. But the atmosphere in an engineering office, be it electrical or mechanical, if you're set up like this with some big monitors and you're doing your AutoCAD work, it had been, the very open workspace. And of course, with COVID now, there's been all the remote work. It's, we're not really, I couldn't certify exactly where that's going. We've been coming back to work, but long-term, some people will stay remote. That has pros and cons. The interaction is very helpful. So how does the atmosphere workplace differ? I would say, construction being more old school, civil engineering, it's a little more school of hard knocks. It is. I mean, a little more, tougher attitudes, I would say, than, if you're working in electrical or chemical engineering. Chemical engineering, maybe you're doing more, ebbing over toward more lab work. So it's the type of workplace, and then there's the personality. I think I've answered that a little bit.
No, that sounds good, Marty.
Yeah.
I do, because generally engineers tend to be more thinkers than feelers. So they tend to use logic a lot. And so sometimes you have to have a little bit of hard skin in different engineering areas. But generally, engineers will respect each other if they know they're good at what they do. And they will, do you have a pretty good cooperative spirit among construction and engineering people, Marty?
Yeah, generally, and that is another area that's gotten better over the decades. Decades ago, it used to be much more combative, and it was really non-productive. And now there's a much greater collaboration. In construction, there's a great move toward what's called design build. It's a collaborative delivery model instead of the old what's called design bid build, where something's designed, you bid it, and then a constructor goes and builds it, and there's a combative attitude of the designer and owner versus the construction company who's just trying to make money, and the owner wants it perfect. And that's luckily design build, which is where it's not just low bid, it's advancing at about 12% rate increase in volume per year. So it's really growing, where it's a collaborative environment. And I tell you, younger people really enjoy that, where, you're not going in and getting into a fight with the designers or owners. That's just ridiculous. Everybody has the same ultimate goals, and you need to live in the world together. I see a question here. What qualifications do you need to have to get an engineering scholarship? I'd say there's a few different ways. The most classical way is, you've gotten good grades and you apply for an academic scholarship. That's the most classical. But even back when and William, you may not remember this, I applied for a scholarship to University of Cincinnati, civil engineering, from the Kenwood, don't laugh, Kenwood Ladies Club. Okay. I don't know what they're called now, but, and I was not a great student. I mean, I was a B student. I wasn't horrible, but I wasn't getting any academic scholarships. And I actually got, I think it was $100. It was a $100 scholarship from them. And the basis was that I wrote to them and said, hey, I love construction. I work and I want to go here. And, I'm out looking for scholarships, and here's why I love construction, and here's why I'm going to succeed. And I got a scholarship. I know that when my kids went to college, there's books written about, and there's websites about all the scholarships and how to apply. It was really quite overwhelming to me. But so there's what qualifications do you need? Scott, you're going to have to help me here. So there's academic, and then there's just, I'll call them motivational. They see you as, when we hire people, it's not that you got the best grades or, you have all the right answers. It's about motivation. And do we think you're going to succeed? Do we think that you love what we do here? Do we think that you'd fit into our company culture? That's a lot of that end. But Scott, on the scholarship.
That's right. What Marty says is true. We have basically two main categories of scholarships: merit-based, and if you have decent grades, if you're a B student, but your parents make very little money, then a lot of schools will give you, or organizations will give you, scholarships just because you need the money. And as Marty said, you're motivated and you want really hard to do that. And so what we have is that most schools our students go to, including all of the California public universities, have essays that you're required to write. And they'll have you choose from a topic, and it's called a prompt. And it might say, tell us about a difficult time you had in dealing with someone and how did you get through it? Or tell us about a time when you helped someone else that really needed it, what happened? And there's usually a 650 word limit. So that's where you can have a motivational essay that will help get you over. Because if a organization, if a school's looking at someone that's a honor student and they have done no community service and they don't have a high motivation essay, then they're in bigger trouble. Okay. So on the other hand, if they excel and they have experience, maybe summer jobs in their area, then they're more likely to get a scholarship. So when the student applies to an engineering program at a college, a lot of the colleges will have a financial package they'll offer them. And again, it's based on need and merit. And the merit is if you've got experience on internships or summer jobs like Marty had, and they may give the scholarships to students with a B instead of an A because they think the students tried harder and they've got that experience. So it does vary. But as coaches, we all have information for you, and we encourage the students to go to the colleges they're interested in and look at freshman financial aid available, especially if it's within an engineering program or pre-pharmacy or pre-med or computer science or whatever that is. So I hope that's helpful. And as coaches, we also have special list of scholarships that the students can look for. Does that help, Maria?
Yes, thank you.
Well, thank you. And just get in touch with your coach and they'll be happy to work with you, work with you. Okay.
Yeah, I would say anybody, if I was applying, I'd need help. That's, you need somebody who knows the ropes, right?
Yeah.
To help you.
Many years ago when I went to school, I didn't even know they had scholarships and grants.
That was a long time ago. Did they have college back then, Coach William?
That was in the ancient days when they had the Flintstones. Okay, so or do we have any other questions? Okay, well, let's give Marty our thanks then for taking time out of his work today to do this. And I will thank you again, Marty. This, I think, has been very valuable.
You're welcome. As I opened up, one of my comments was I stopped counting at over 200. Try to mentor people, bring them along, help them, not be selfish, It has to be a good fit both ways. And, not just a one-way street with an employer.
Well, thank you again, Marty. I think you've been really done a valuable job tonight to help them. And so hopefully some of our students will go on into civil engineering, construction, and project management. And hopefully some of our coaches and consultants will encourage their students to do that too.
All right.
Okay, so we can leave now, but I want to thank you again.
Yeah. Glad to try to help. Hopefully I helped that much. If I helped that much, I did good.
Helped a lot more than that, believe me.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you so much.